Okay, well, hello, and thank you for joining us. I am Kim Kufal with the Shocker Career Accelerator here at Wichita State University, and I'm excited to have some pros with us from LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning that are going to give us some awesome information. Before we get started here, if you have the Shockers 360 app, or if you want to get the Shockers 360 app, go ahead and scan that QR code. And if you already have the Shockers 360 app, scan the LinkedIn workshop to get credit for attending the workshop today. And if you're a current WSU student and you're not on Shockers 360, go ahead and type your WSU ID in the chat and we'll get you credit for attending this workshop. I know some instructors and groups are giving extra credit for this, but we will get you that co-curricular credit in Shockers 360. Just drop your WSU ID right in there. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our LinkedIn people. And again, if you want to leave your video cameras on, you can do that. We ask that you do mute yourself. And if you have any questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat. And we're going to make this interactive. So if you have any questions or thoughts, just drop that in the chat and our fabulous host will look at those and I'll look at those and we'll help get your questions answered. And you can also click the three dots above our two speakers, which are Eric and Sarah. You could click on, I think it's spotlight for everyone. So that'll just spotlight the people that are talking back and forth. So that's another option. All right. Well, I'll let you guys, let me stop my share so that Sarah and Eric can bring it up. We have Sarah and Eric with LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. I just flipped over my background so you could see who's who. It's so nice to see folks with their cameras on and sharing. Thank you for coming. Yeah. Awesome showing today. Appreciate you all registering and coming, and if you're watching the recording after this, thanks for checking in as well. Mm-hmm. We're going to kick it off with some introductions. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if this doesn't work.
We always joke about that's always something you talk about. Mute, unmute, right? And then, can you see my screen? Right. So,
new 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
We good?
Yeah.
We're good.
All right. So
could I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, Usha.
Being recorded because my students are interested in this, but many of them couldn't come.
This is being recorded, and Kim told us that those who registered will get the recording afterwards. So we should pass it on. Does that sound right, Kim?
Yes, it's being recorded, and we are going to send it off to get closed captioned. So that takes 2-3 days. So be patient with us, but you will get it.
Thank you. And it's okay to post it up. It's okay to post it on the web or post it on.
Yes, you can.
Hey, Kim. Everywhere. Kim, this is Carrie Welks, Associate Dean of the Graduate School.
Carrie,
hi.
Yes. Carrie's going to close caption it
Yeah,
for
well, actually, Carolyn Spears' group is, and we will be posting this for all graduate students. We'll be posting this in the Blackboard Professional Development site, linked to on-demand resources. So anyone that is trying to get a graduate student access to this video, you can tell them to go to the organization Professional Development in Blackboard. Again, give us a few days. Thanks. And thank you to our presenters, Carrie. And thank you to all the students, faculty, and staff that joined us.
A team effort. That's awesome. Thank you. And thanks, Carrie and Usha, great questions. And I'm going to be sharing some extra resources throughout today as well. So as well as the recording itself, we have a few different sessions that will be coming up next month. One of them is called Rockstars Live. And next session, we are actually going to be focusing specifically on graduate students. So I especially recommend folks who are working with grad students to send them our way. I will send out the information about that all afterwards. I believe it's the 27th, but I don't want to misquote. If you can fact check me on that, Eric. I'm running it, so I should know. But
that's correct.
We are awesome. We're going to be talking through some tips and tricks around some of the content that we'll talk about today around Rock Your Profile. But we're also going to be interviewing the Dean of the Graduate School at Princeton, one of his grad students, talking a little bit about the world of going into graduate school, and then how to kind of set yourself up for success leaving graduate school as well on the academia side. So tons of good stuff to dig into there as well. In addition, a lot of the content we're going to talk about will go into even deeper depth in our Rock Your LinkedIn Profile course that we have on LinkedIn Learning. And some of it will be slightly different. So some of the content we'll talk through today is a little subjective. People have different opinions on what you should and shouldn't do. So I definitely recommend taking a peek at that. It's a little over an hour's worth of content led by our incredible master trainer, Lauren Jolder, who trains us to do these sessions. And there's some really fantastic tips and tricks that you can go through at your own pace and share that with students too, so that they can have a slightly different way to digest this information too. Okay, well, before we get too into the weeds on the resources, let's start by actually introducing who these random talking heads with LinkedIn backgrounds are. Eric, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the handoff here. So yeah, my name is Eric Rauber, and I work as a relationship manager with Wichita State University. So basically what that means is I work with your team on sort of the broader picture of kind of where we're looking to go with our partnership. As you might know, we have a LinkedIn Learning partnership with you guys we've had for a little over a year. And I've been working in higher education now for about 6 years with LinkedIn. And one tradition, I'm going to drop this as kind of a surprise on Sarah. One tradition we have with LinkedIn, she probably knows where I'm going with this. One tradition we have with LinkedIn is we like to tell something about ourselves that's not on our LinkedIn profile. So I'll give you something about myself that's not on my LinkedIn profile. So the first job that I ever had was I worked for a company that I was 18. I worked for a company that was related to Space Camp. It was called Aviation Challenge. So it was like Space Camp, but you were flying planes and stuff. And I was 18, so I wasn't trusted enough to be a camp counselor. So I was what was called a support counselor. And basically my job was to run a paintball course all day long for the entire summer in the middle of California. So if you're not aware of that, it could be 115 degrees in the middle of California. And I ran a paintball course. I was the bad guy in this scenario. And basically what I would do all day was I would shoot paintballs at 7 to 15-year-olds all day long. And so it was the most random job, and my parents, they ended up not liking it because they said, you had the most fun job ever and it was your first job. It's all downhill from here. Exactly. So that's something that is not on my LinkedIn profile, though it probably should be. But it's a little bit about me, kind of where I come from. Sarah?
Yeah, I feel like you should probably include that on your profile. That explains so much, Eric. That's a great tidbit. I'm Sarah. I'm the customer success manager. So Eric and I work as two halves of the same coin to support Wichita State. And I've been in the education technology world for a number of years now. Before that, I was a teacher. So I taught middle school, high school, and preschool before that, English. Originally hailing from London in the UK, but I have a pretty muddled background with a bunch of different international parents. One thing not on my LinkedIn profile, I like that first job. My first real job was actually as a makeup artist. I worked for Smashbox and Bliss. It's my first job in the States, just graduated high school, was taking a gap year, and I learned a ton in that role. So it's funny that it's not on my LinkedIn profile, but it couldn't quite make it fit with my story, in my education story, although really, when you think about it, I was just teaching people how to do a good job painting their face. It's very peaceful, very relaxing. I had a great time. I was in Seattle, Washington, so I also got to do some extremely fun Halloween drag makeup often, which was always a good time, and all kinds of weddings and fun, graduation and prom events like that too. So very fond memories. You learn a lot from those first roles, even if they don't necessarily end up being your career long term. So keep an eye out for those funky sorts of jobs.
Yep.
So should we kick it into our presentation then, Eric?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I love people are throwing some of theirs in here too. By the way.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Customer service manager for a dating company. Hey.
Nice. Very good, Rob.
That's a good one. All right, kick it off.
Well, I think in this same vein, leaving college, whether you're leaving your undergraduate or your graduate degree, can be very overwhelming. And the idea of thinking, oh my gosh, my initial job is going to be the thing that I'm stuck doing for the rest of my life. Well, think just thinking through Eric and my tidbit stories there, it's not always going to be the be all and end all. So one thing to keep in mind is that as you're leaving, we're going to try and help you set up for the absolute most success that you can have as a graduate student, as a really fantastic and qualified candidate coming out with an awesome degree from great school, and then thinking about where you're going. But think through, there will be different scenarios where you apply to jobs that don't work out, where you get jobs that don't work out. And so let's figure out some ways that you make sure you're ready to find success in the roles that you're looking for. We're going to share a lot of data with you today as well. Obviously, with LinkedIn, we have tons of awesome data to share with you. The idea is that by showing you these pieces, we're going to really be able to help you have personalized job recommendations based on your skills, based on the amazing alumni network that's available to you, and based on your areas of interest going forward. So a couple of things to think through is the difference between some other social media you might use and LinkedIn. So whereas on various other social media, you're going to be sharing things about your personal life, LinkedIn is really for the professional side of you. So a few things we might put into context of this funny sort of hope not to make you too hungry analogy around donuts. You might find that on Instagram, you're taking photos of donuts, you're doing a TikTok dance, you're posting a recipe on Pinterest, that kind of thing. Whereas if we're on LinkedIn, we're going to get more focused on the professional side of things. What are your aspirations? Maybe operating a donut franchise or a shop. Maybe telling others how much experience you have in the donut industry or in sales. Maybe getting some recommendations from former colleagues that you've worked with donuts with. So just a silly way to kind of set up your mindset. If you haven't already really dug in, we are using LinkedIn strategically. You're thinking about reaching your professional goals and building your brand. And the idea there is to get hired, to set yourself up as a really appealing, successful candidate. And that's hopefully going to really get you noticed by your future boss and by recruiters specifically. A few data points to back this up. There are over 2.5 million people hired on LinkedIn every year through their connections. So it's not just important that you start getting on LinkedIn and branding yourself. It's important to start finding the people that you know and building out your network that way. And if that's not clear enough, we have over 10 million employers who post 7.5 million jobs per month. And we've seen a lot of data, especially this last year with COVID and all of the changes in the economy. We've seen this go up and down like crazy, but people are always hiring. The industries they're hiring for have shifted a little bit, but there are certainly a lot of pretty incredible jobs being posted every month. So be aware of those. And we also have 92% of recruiters who use LinkedIn daily. So they are constantly on the platform, looking at those new candidates. They are noticing algorithmically the information that they're posting and the jobs that they're applying to. And I can't go any further without telling you what this giant QR code is for. If you haven't already had a chance to hover over it, this is your individualized activation link for Wichita State. So if you hover over that with your camera on your phone, you'll be able to go directly into LinkedIn Learning. And this is going to take you through the browser. So don't go to the app just yet. Go through the browser to activate if you have not yet accessed your LinkedIn Learning account. And it's going to ask you if you'd like to connect your LinkedIn profile with your LinkedIn Learning account. And the reason I'm sending you in this direction is because there are a plethora of amazing courses that we have to support all of the content we're going to talk through today, set you up for success when you're going out into the world of job hunting and finding your career. One of them is called LinkedIn Learning for Students. One of my second favorites on the same vein is called Job Hunting for College Grads. Both fantastic courses. Definitely recommend just jumping into LinkedIn Learning as we go through this course and thinking about which other courses on LinkedIn Learning that you might want to take afterwards. You can bookmark those, you can save them for yourselves for later. And whenever you have time, you could even do them offline, just listening to them as you're going for a walk or a drive, and starting to just get a little bit more knowledge around the subject. And a few more stats to know. If you do apply for a job on LinkedIn within the first 10 minutes of getting a notification that that job exists, you're going to increase your chances of hearing back by 4 times. So yes, we often think about the quality of our application, but if you're set to go and you have a stellar LinkedIn profile, have your resume all set to go, and you can apply quickly to different jobs, you are going to get more responses. So that's just the way that our recruiters tend to function on the system. And now that we know that, hopefully you can harness that statistic to help you. Adding LinkedIn Learning certificates is also going to get your profile a lot more noticed and a lot more likely to be hired than anyone without one. So right now we see 9%. I actually think this just ticked up to 10. But the certificates that you can earn are through LinkedIn Learning. Perhaps you do something that is a course that is really specific to the industry you're interested in going into. Perhaps it's a more broad topic like emotional intelligence or communication or leadership. Those things, adding those certificates, those things are really likely to make you a more appealing candidate. And if you do have connections at a company, you are 4 times more likely to get a job there. So that's just to drive home the fact that yes, your profile is important, but actually connecting with other folks there and developing your network is just as important there too. So it's a good thing to start today. I'm gonna kick it over to Eric for some more details here. Is it your turn yet, Eric, or am I doing this bit too?
I think you got one or two more.
Awesome. Okay, sorry about that. We
It's all
usually
good.
do these separately.
Right.
So a few things that we're going to go through in lots of detail here are just some top items to really grab recruiters' attention. And these pieces, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of information I'm going to share with you. What I would recommend you do is just grab yourself a little notebook if you have one, scribble down a pen and paper, just put 1, 2, and 3 on a piece of paper and give yourselves 3 things to do. So maybe in the next 24 hours, give yourself a deadline. Think of 3 things that you can do after this session that we recommend that will improve your LinkedIn profile or improve your backup skills to be able to go out and get a job and support yourself as an awesome candidate. We're going to give you all sorts of detail around these things, but just so that you know, when you are applying to jobs, there is a hiring manager, and 75% of those are going to go to your LinkedIn profile to check out you as a candidate. Think about what your experience is, what your background is, and learn more about you. So the idea is that you're really building this out and getting recruiters' attention, but then also potentially impressing your future boss, your potential boss. And there's a big difference between LinkedIn and your resume. So you might already think, hey, we already have a resume. Why are we even doing this? But let's talk a little bit more about that. And also notice that I've got a bunch of links in this deck. So there's one link down here, which is around writing your resume. And that is a great course to bookmark for yourselves too, if you go into LinkedIn Learning. We can, of course, not cover every single thing on LinkedIn Learning. So this is a great place to start if you have a chance to do that now. All right, Eric, take it away.
All right, yeah. So one of the things that I think I can steal for these for the future is we did one of these presentations yesterday, and one of our colleagues called the LinkedIn profile versus the resume. The profile is like the trailer for the movie about you, where the resume is the movie. You know, so what you really want to do when you're talking about the profile is you really want to build this up over time. It's something that's going to be really essentially a living, breathing thing. So there used to be jokes about from hiring managers and others where people would actually start, once you notice your employees starting to update their LinkedIn profiles, is almost like a red flag, like, oops, they're looking for other jobs. But really what LinkedIn is now, especially, and the profile is being engaged with it, building your network, chatting with people, connecting with people, liking things, sharing things, etc. You know, so what you're really going to want to do is you're going to want to really speak to your potential audience. What your LinkedIn profile is really, it's a marketing piece for you as a professional. You know, so kind of even taking a little bit of a step back as to what LinkedIn is. LinkedIn is obviously a large, enormous professional network. It's the largest social professional network in the world. There's something near 800 million people that utilize LinkedIn. And the purpose behind LinkedIn, especially in the higher education sense, is to help students, help faculty, help staff connect with opportunity and find opportunity. You know, so that's one of the partnerships and one of the reasons from our partnership that we work with you guys with LinkedIn profile, or excuse me, with LinkedIn Learning, is that you can learn new skills. You can upload their certificates into your profile and can build out your profile. So as you can see kind of on the list there, you want to, again, speak to what you have as skills. Again, even if this may be your potential first job that you're going after, there's a lot of different things about yourself that you can expand on, like volunteer work, get recommendations from faculty members, endorsements from others, and so forth. You can go ahead and go on the next slide. So let's kind of talk again about, you know, what the nuts and bolts are of the LinkedIn profile. So number one, your education. When you list, and this may seem obvious, but not everyone does this, but when you list your education, especially as a student, obviously, coming out of school, you're going to have a 10 times more chance for someone to actually view your profile. You know, you need to add the school, add your major, add your degree, add all of the different things that you may have done on campus, because again, these are going to spell or speak so much to what you are as an individual. Because people nowadays, hiring and recruiting managers are looking for individuals that they can help mold. They're looking to individuals that are well developed, but they're also looking for folks that have the skills, but also the interest in building themselves up. So if you put your education there, you expand on it a lot further. It's a lot like your work experience as well. But that's incredibly important for you to go ahead and make sure you update all the different things. For me, I went to community college for a couple of years, and then I went to 4-year school. I put both of them on there. I say what I did and why I went to community college, why I went to the 4-year college, and why I studied what I studied. Go ahead, next slide. I should do a next slide like hand gesture or like or something like that. Anyways, all right, your photo. I don't know, I think it's a good idea. So your photo. I was joking with Kim before this. My photo is 10 years old. I feel like I nailed it 10 years ago. I probably have gray hair in 10 years, but I might still have the same photo. But your photo. Have you ever been on LinkedIn and received a connection request or seen somebody who doesn't have a photo? In today's day and age, a lot of people are afraid of bots and that kind of thing. Having a photo, a professional photo, a photo that shows a little bit about you, it's going to give you a 21 times more chance that people are going to review it. So let's say you're graduated, you're out there, you're looking to be recruited by recruiters, and you don't have a photo. I guarantee everything else can be good. You'll fall to the bottom of the list because they just simply don't see you. It's just how our society operates right now. And again, you have some tips and tricks there of what it is for you to do. I have colleagues that even sort of break some of these rules, like the you alone. I have people with like animals and stuff like that. That's actually, in my opinion, that's actually fine. It shows a little bit more about who you are as an individual. It shows you're also creative, and we'll get into some of those creative things as well. And I like the last, no fancy photographer needed. Honestly, a lot of times a selfie, one that looks good. The point is it looks good. It gives a good first impression. Next slide. So your experience, again, you see the numbers there. You have a significant increase in the amount of recruiters that will actually find you because of your experience. This is almost more important than almost anything else. And this experience can be virtually anything you've done. Internships, summer jobs, part-time jobs. Back to my story, I don't know why I don't have my LinkedIn on my LinkedIn profile for the fact that I worked for Aviation Challenge, maybe because it was a long time ago. But that's the kind of stuff that's really going to describe who you are. Again, we did a presentation yesterday where we had the question from this woman who had asked. She said, "I've had a lot of different careers over my time, and if you look at my profile, it's not all very linear. It looks like I've kind of bounced around in all these different things." And I raised my hand and I said, "Yeah, me too. I had the same thing. I've gone through many different careers. I used to work in minor league baseball. I used to be a teacher. I used to teach mediation. I used to work in marketing, and now I work with LinkedIn in this role. Very different roles that I've had in life. But what I've done with my profile is I've described what is the consistency and what created the opportunity for me with my next role, as we call LinkedIn our next play. So if you list out your experience, whatever they may be, it's really going to, again, it's going to tell what you've done. So you might have gotten a promotion in a job or anything like that. The more you start adding that kind of stuff to it, the more experience, the more recruiters are going to see, and also gives them a little bit of a taste as to what skills you might actually have. Next slide. Volunteer experience. This is another huge piece of it. Again, this is describing you in a broad way. So this is describing you as a person who has more to give to the organization that you're looking to potentially get hired from than simply just a person filling a seat that has skills. So this is sort of the intangible, they're tangible, but almost an intangible type of quality that you bring to your role, especially now because so many organizations, especially large organizations, you know, we work for a big tech company. There's a huge, huge wing of LinkedIn that is based on the volunteer work we might do. I mean, there are all kinds of employee resource groups and all these different things that really just help people to build up the various different things that they do. The more you start putting that kind of stuff in there too, again, it's just as valuable as your experience might be and skills you might have. Because again, even if you describe what you did, that is valuable experience in this. This is just like having a job. In fact, a lot of volunteer work is pretty much a job. Next slide. So your skills, these are some of the things that a lot of times people can overlook. But today's market with recruiters is becoming more and more skill-based. You know, you see the numbers there with the number of profile views you might have if you have 5 or more skills. A lot of recruiters now are looking for very specific information as to what you do. The nice thing about LinkedIn Learning is the more you build up your skills using LinkedIn Learning, the more you add your certificates of completion to your LinkedIn profile, the more you can continue to build your skills up. Your skills are also on LinkedIn, also have the ability to be exceptional. You can kind of see it there where people can actually give a vote, if you will, and say, yes, I know this person has the skills. I've worked with this person in this particular way. So again, it gives you a significantly deeper profile to really focus yourself and say, hey, I know Adobe, I can do these things. All these people say that I can do this. You notice there too, that it says speaking, do you speak Mandarin? Specifics like that, I grew up as a son of a Spanish teacher. For whatever reason, I don't speak Spanish. I still do not like that to this day. I would love to be able to put I speak Spanish on my profile, but I don't. If you do and you speak multiple languages and that kind of thing, that is another place for you to go. And that's another place for you to basically expand on who you are as an individual. Because LinkedIn recruiters will go on and they will search for specific skills. And if you know, if you ever do a Google search, for instance, and you put in a particular word or a company and you see right at the top it says ad, it's called search engine optimization. When you see something like an ad like that, that is a company trying to move themselves to the top of a list. You put more skills in there, you're going to start showing up at the top of the list. That's really what you're doing with this. Okay, next slide. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're gonna. So I put in the chat before, and if you can and you have a LinkedIn profile, open it up and take a look at it. So Sarah's going to drop into the chat a link here to this, what we call My Profile, My Story.
I'm gonna send it out afterwards.
Oh, you're
It's
gonna
a
send
smart
it out?
link. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, it's a smart link. Okay, cool. So what this is essentially a little bit of homework. So it's as you can kind of see there, it's a guide on how to build an impactful LinkedIn profile. But as it says very pointedly there, your professional story. You may or may not feel like a professional at this time because you're a student. But the idea is that you go through the process of this workshop and you're really strategic about what you want to get out of this with LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile. What do you want to be known for? This is very important because you know, it adds kinesthetic quality to this too, because you're actually sitting down and you're actually going through the questions and you're actually going through the work, really beginning to build that profile. And again, this isn't just a one and done situation. Every time you do something new in your work or you do something new with your experience at college, add more, because once you get ready to move on from the college and you start looking for recruiting opportunities for yourself, you're going to have such a robust profile. You're that much more likely to have a job coming out of school. Go ahead. Next one.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there are some great thoughts and questions that have come up in the chat as we were going through this, and a few of them that I think pertinent to talk about here.
Yeah.
The great question here, could unrelated job experience to your current job path be relevant? You touched on that when we were talking about the example from yesterday. And I think that's a great example. Dow, please tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name, said that that your job was as a newspaper delivery person in Finland. Now you're a computer science student in the US. Totally different seemingly, but there I'm sure are some skills and responsibilities that you have in that prior role that would lend some expertise and some experience to your potential field. So in the same way that Eric and I described, we had slightly unconventional jobs as our first roles, but what did we learn from those? Try and take away those accomplishments and focus on the vocabulary that you include on your LinkedIn profile as accomplishments, as achievement-focused vocabulary. Were you responsible for something? Did you spearhead something? Were you initiating something? Were you the first person to do X, Y, or Z? And this is not the time to be humble. I'm from England and we're not a very braggy culture, but in LinkedIn, the idea is that you are showing your absolute best side and why you would be an exceptional addition to someone's company or field. So really think through those pieces that you can add and why they might track towards what you're going towards as well.
Right, and I'll add to this as a former failed newspaper delivery person myself. So you can break the role down into the various pieces that are involved. So I substituted for a guy one time for like a week, and I was not very good at it. But I was very young. But there's a significant time management piece to newspaper delivery. So it's every day at 5 o'clock, the truck comes and dumps it off, and you've got to get them folded, and you've got to get them to the doors by a certain period of time. You've got a map of every single house that you've got to hit up. So, and you've got to get it done because you had to go to school or you had to do something else. So there's a significant piece of time management and organization skills that goes into that. So any job you've had to do at any time, break it up into the various responsibilities. And that's what I did with my profile is you find a theme amongst all the different things that you do, and you can really point out, I had those papers at everyone's door exactly the time they're supposed to be there every single day. By the way, I was still going to school or whatever I was doing. That's something that I always have tried to do is just really break this down into the specific skills and needs that I had for whatever job I was working on.
Great point. Yeah, and Emily said a really profound thing too. One thing she's heard from people who hire interns is that it's a good idea to demonstrate how you've successfully worked independently before. That's such a good point. You're essentially telling that employer, you're not going to have to micromanage me. Like, yes, I know I don't have that much experience and you're just hiring me as an intern, but if you tell me what to do, I'm going to get it done because I can work independently. That is a huge asset as someone who's worked and managed interns, and I see it happening all the time at LinkedIn as well. That's a huge element to show off. So yeah, thank you very much for that input, Emily. Great point.
Right.
A couple more questions here from folks who have more experience too. So especially if you're maybe career changing and that's why you're currently at Wichita State, or maybe you are coming back to the grad department, for example, how far back should you go in your profile? So working for a lot of years, what should you put in? It's funny you mentioned that because I just got my dad to go back and do his. He had never done one before. I was like, you can't have me working at LinkedIn and not have a LinkedIn profile. That's ridiculous. But he's been in the economics field for 40 years now. So figuring out what to put down is a challenge. I would definitely say everything that is relevant to your current career that you would want folks to know when you're applying to jobs, you should include. So I don't have, my first roles as a makeup artist on there because I think it busies up my profile. It doesn't necessarily add that much to it. But if I was trying to highlight different things like my ability to hit sales quota numbers, that would be somewhere that I did do that. That's a completely different field than what I do now. So there might be reasons that you want to highlight skills that you have from those previous roles. You don't have to go into a ton of experience. I've also seen people include jobs that they were at for a long period of time, but not ones that perhaps they were only in for 6 months to a year. I've seen that be a bit of a rule of thumb. If you're in a job for much less than a year, it doesn't necessarily need to be included if it's a long time back. But you are trying to share with people how experienced you are. And that's definitely an asset when you're going into any kind of job hunting or networking opportunity. So don't be shy about going right back as much as it might take a little while to put it all in there. It's worth it.
I'd add too that one of the things when I used to hire interns as well is when you expand on some of the things you've done in the past, especially if you've been somewhere for 5 years, 4 years, whatever, it shows commitment to the role. And so another thing that recruiters are going to be looking at is they don't want to make a hire that hire is going to bounce in 6 months or a year necessarily. They want to understand that this is a person that I'm going to hire that has certain qualities, and one of those qualities is commitment. And no one's especially now, even, I mean, when we work with LinkedIn, our entire company's purpose is to help people get jobs, right? So what they really want to see is they want to see somebody who's going to be able to hunker down, and they're going to be able to commit to the role that you're in. So having even jumped to different places in the past, if you show commitment of being there for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, you show them that this is a person that can fill the seat. This is a person that can do this for quite some time and help fill my role. So that is a positive quality too, to also get into.
Absolutely. And a few other pieces that came up here. So there were a couple of questions around skills assessments. And we talked about the skills pieces. Skills assessments are a fantastic tool to put on your profile. I just read yesterday that you have a skills assessment, you're 20% more likely to get a role. So adding those to yours is super helpful, especially if you have a specific skill, like something to do with any kind of programming language. You're really proficient at a Microsoft tool, for example. Even there's one for Outlook that I did and passed yesterday. I was very pleased with that. And there are some really excellent skills assessments available there. So definitely recommend doing those. They are not compulsory. You can also, of course, use LinkedIn Learning courses to get those skills. And I'd recommend actually being strategic about that too. So we showed you this data around, how much it helps in terms of the skills that you have listed. But think about the skills that are actually relevant to the roles you're interested in. You might not know exactly what those roles are, but if you are going into a vague topic, a vague industry, maybe you've selected your major, you know kind of which direction you're headed in, think about what the most in demand, fastest growing, and most important top skills are for that industry. And if you don't know, that's okay. We report on those every year in our workforce development reports. So certainly take a look at those. You just Google that, LinkedIn, top skills industries, you'll find a bunch of information about it online. Mm-hmm. And you should probably have some ideas already about which skills are going to be important. You know that if you're going into the accounting world, a real proficiency in Excel is going to be important. If you're going to be an engineer, you're going to need to know a few different kinds of languages for programming, whichever are most important top of the field that you're looking for. So be specific about the skills that you're gathering. And as you take those LinkedIn Learning courses to help with them, add those skills to your profile to help with that too. Thanks for those awesome questions coming in. I think we got all of them, and we're going to use Mary Peterson's question, which is around who should you connect with? Is it a good idea to connect with different people from different companies that you're interested in, families, family members and fellow students? Certainly. Let's talk a little bit more about that in our next section here. So part of getting hired is thinking about contacting people that can help you do that. Who can help you land that job that you might be interested in? So start out by figuring out who you can immediately start looking at through the alumni tool. This is a huge network opportunity that you have. Go to Wichita State University, go to the alumni page, which is going to be on that left contents, and you'll be able to see real insights about who works where. Not only can you see whereabouts they're located, which actually really within the last year, not as important anymore. A lot of companies are completely remote, so you might not actually prioritize the idea of location. I know we are certainly rethinking the structure on that at LinkedIn. So thinking about where they work, what sorts of companies they're currently at, and then where they actually work within that company. I don't think where they do is actually, that seems like it might be a typo, but we think which area of the company they work in. So yes, they may work for Amazon, but Amazon is an enormous company. Perhaps they work for AWS in the engineering team, and you want to go work for their learning and development team for Amazon.com. So could be completely different. Try and narrow down who you might want to connect with that way. And then when you're ready, figure out which people are going to make the most impact and start by prioritizing them. So a few tips on how, and most importantly, how not to connect with people as well. When you are mapping out who you know, first think about those people that you actually know, your first connections. So are they alumni that you've met? Have you been TA'd by them? Have they been in a course with you? Have you interacted with them at some point? If they aren't an alumni, maybe they're a peer that you've talked with, you're in a group with them, they ran a seminar for you. Think about those folks that you can connect with now that you currently know. And the reason for these connections is that you are way more likely to get a job through a referral. 85% of jobs are filled through employee referrals. That's pretty mind-blowing, right? So you are tons more likely to get that job through your referral, purely because that is someone who can account that you are not only a good person, but potentially a good candidate for this role, and they have some background about who you are, which just makes you much more personable. There's, of course, the flip side to this, which makes it more challenging to folks who don't have a big network, but this is why it's important to start thinking about who you can connect with now. So yes, prioritize the people that you already know, but then also start thinking about who else you can add. And then when you do add those people, tell them why. It's really important that you personalize your invitation so that people aren't going, who is this person? I've never met them before. I'm definitely not going to accept them. After running processes like this, we run workshops and sessions, which is a big part of Eric and my role. We get a lot of invitations to connect. I always look through all my invitations and I make sure that I figure out who these people are. Sometimes I can sort of figure out who people are by what's listed on their profile. But if they don't let me know, if they don't send me an invitation and say something like, I was in your workshop, or we talked at this thing, or we connected at this and that event, and they don't tell me why they're connecting with me, I do not accept them as a role. And that is because I value my network as people that I know. How do I know these people? Why are we connected? When I need to reach out to my network for something, do I know that everyone in my network that I'm connected to, are they actually people that I can call on to help, or that I can help backwards? So do think about that when you're adding them. Tell them who you are, tell them where you met, and let them know why you're connecting with them. So is it that you'd like to speak with them about the company they work for? Is it that you would love to know their career transition experience? My change from being a classroom teacher and then going into the education technology world is one that a lot of teachers have done before. And I've talked to a lot of people about that as my experience. I also got a lot out of asking other folks who left the classroom what their experience was too. So connecting with people, asking them that, letting them know you would love to steal 20 minutes of their time. In a hopefully a post-COVID or a vaccinated world, we can start meeting people for coffees and kind of buy your coffee and pick your brain about this thing. But certainly tapping up those connections for help, super important. Now, if they're not people that you know at all, maybe those are alum that you haven't actually met before, do let them know that. We haven't crossed paths, but we both went to WSU. I would love to chat with you about so-and-so, as a fellow shocker, there is a bunch that we have in common, and I'd love to learn about this and that. And people really will often say yes. They really like talking about themselves. This is a commonality of human beings. Everyone likes to talk about themselves. So ask them what sort of information they can share with you. And if they don't have time, that's okay as well. I will say the question always comes up, how many times can I do that? Like if I try and connect with someone and I shoot them a message and they don't respond, can I bump that? I always say, I think 2 times, twice is the charm for me. Tapping someone up and saying that you'd love to chat with them. If you don't hear back, just saying, just checking that you got this message. And if you didn't have time to respond, maybe you do now, no worries. If not, no pressure. I certainly appreciate that. I've definitely had that experience where I've gone in the middle of a busy time and I just forgot to respond. So don't be shy on that front, but also twice is probably enough. And I think this is an important piece to pivot a little bit on why are we connecting with people? So as you're messaging those connections, you're talking to people about their experience, you're understanding a little bit more about their background, you're trying to learn from their experience as well. There's a huge opportunity here to run what we call informational interviews. And that's a fancy way of saying, let's sit down and have a coffee, but it's actually a much more structured version of that. So if you think of this as, well, I'm going to go out and meet, a ton of different people and ask them about their careers, but I don't go with any version of a plan. I show up and I just say, hey, how's it going? What's news? And then we spend an hour together and I don't actually learn anything about how they found success in this and that role. That's an hour that you've wasted at both of your times. So go into that informational interview, knowing what you want to get out of it, having an idea of questions that you want to ask them, and then see how those seeds that you plant will come back and help you after a while too. So I'm actually going to play a short little video here, which is it's just a bit of a I can exit out of this. Just a bit of an illustration of how this might work and what this sort of actually looks like in a very nicely produced format. So let's see if I can share this correct screen with you. And do please keep these fantastic questions coming. There's some really good ones coming in there. I know Eric's responding to them as we go. Optimize the video clip. Here we go. All right, can we still see that okay?
Yep, we're good.
I told my dad I wanted to leave consulting. On top of that, leave Atlanta for San Francisco. I had a total of 6 months to get a job. So I knew if I didn't come out here on the grind, I was not going to get a job. I would wake up at 6 a.m. every morning. I sent out probably 25 emails a day on LinkedIn to schedule coffee with people I thought were interesting. Probably had 6 to 7 meetings for about 2 months. 7 cups of coffee a day is far too much caffeine for anybody. When I went to these coffee meetings, I never once asked for a job. I strictly said, do you mind just sprinkling tidbits of knowledge for me? During that time, a lot of the rejection I faced was I would go to these meetings and these people wouldn't even show up. Rejection's inevitable, but all it takes is one.
This guy knew what he wanted to do, and took that step.
About a week later, he gave me a call and said, hey, I have a contracting role. Would you be interested in it? So I did that for a bit. Eventually that evolved. He's like, hey, Rahul, let's go out for a walk and talk. And I was like, oh man, he's about to fire me. During that walk, he said, we'd like to offer you full time. I was like, this is awesome.
Now that he's kind of my right-hand man, it's been an amazing journey.
LinkedIn facilitated a lot of the connections I made and the connections I would not have ever made had I not had a tool like that.
So just some ideas in terms of what you might actually want to get out of those informational interviews. Again, go to them, really prepared. Don't just go like Rahul said, sprinkle some tidbits of knowledge on me. Have more meaty questions than that to ask in those sessions, but you'll see that it really does pay off in the long run for sure.
Well, and then too, I think one of the important things that he did there was he didn't necessarily ask for anything. He just, other than, I just want to sit down with you. But he actually offered them something too by simply saying, I'll get you a cup of coffee. So he kind of enticed them and just in a way that was very soft that said, just come sit down with me. You probably need to sit down at some point during the day anyways and take a break. Why don't you just take a break and we'll sit there and we'll do a quick chat. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that out there.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to shift back into a few other things to think about when you are actually ready to start looking at job descriptions and hunting for jobs. So some things to look for and keep in mind. And I'm going to kick it back over to Eric for this one. Oh, I think you're muted.
Classic problem. So first of all, what I'd like to point out is a lot of these points that we have here, there are a lot of courses on this. So you see down at the bottom, job search strategies, turning an internship into a job. There's also in LinkedIn Learning a learning path, which is multiple courses that have a lot of what we're talking about here. The learning path is called How to Be a Successful Job Hunter. It's really geared to, it's not specifically geared to students necessarily or soon-to-be grads, but anyone who is looking for a job. And you might want to learn how to turn an internship into a job or write a resume, all that kind of good stuff. But really what you're going to want to be doing is if you are actually, so just like you're looking at the alumni tool that was there before, you can look any company up and really dig into what that company is. In terms of offering something to people that you're talking to, going in with some sort of information about who they are and not just reaching out and saying, hey, I want a job, because everyone knows you want a job, but what you really want to do is you want to look at them. You see here, their company culture, understand more about your culture. Hey, I noticed this about you guys that was really interesting that makes me want to work for you. So you've taken what your request is and that, hey, I want a job, and you spun it into something that makes it important to them to understand more about you because I fit in this role in these particular ways. So, again, what you can do in a lot of different situations is you can use what LinkedIn has as, essentially first, second, and third person connections. you can use connections such as alumni or others that you may know that are maybe second connections that understand. They maybe have another friend or a former colleague that works at that company. You can reach out to them and say, hey, would you mind introducing me to that person over there? So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually learn more about what the jobs are that are posted on LinkedIn. And there are millions of them at any given time. There's a significant number of jobs that are actually listed on LinkedIn that you can take a look at. Next slide. Job alerts. I mean, this is something that I actually did, ironically, before I started working at LinkedIn. I was actually worked for a company. I was going to ask Sarah earlier, but the reason I work at LinkedIn is because of a referral. I used to work at a marketing company, and one of my former colleagues, a good friend of mine, got a job at this company called lynda.com, which was long story short, acquired by LinkedIn a handful of years ago. And the reason I actually got the role at lynda.com was I knew they were a local tech company. I knew they were up and coming. They were a private company, and I set up a job alert. And I had known my colleague, former colleague friend, had got a job there, and all of a sudden I got a job alert that said, hey, they were in what's called a surge hiring phase, which a lot of companies do that at different times. And I got a job alert because I had set it up for various companies in my area. And so simply what I did was kind of what we're describing here is I reached out to that former colleague, and I said, hey, I know you've talked really a lot about this place. Is there possible you can get me a referral for an actual application? And that's exactly what I did. So the job alert is something that you can set up for virtually any company that you have out there that you might be interested in your particular area. I will say this, and this is what I used to say to the interns that I used to work with when I was in minor league baseball. If you want to live in a particular area, that's great. But sometimes you have to make the choice to go where the opportunity is. So if you have to, and you really want to find a really good opportunity, don't just limit yourself to the particular area that you're in. When I was looking for the marketing job, what ended up being the marketing job, I live in California. I was looking in the Bay Area of California. I don't live in the Bay Area of California because I actually got through another referral. I don't know if it was through LinkedIn at the time, might have been, but through another referral, a job in Southern California with a former colleague. So if you kind of see, there's a tie between how I've been able to kind of get where I am by using these job alerts, using these referrals, and successful connections and networking that I had had from the past that was able to get my foot in the door, essentially. And you build so much trust that way. Go ahead.
You do, and especially now, you might notice that there are a lot of roles that say that they're based in a specific location, but when you actually get through the interview process or you start speaking with the recruiter for it, they'll find out that actually they're no longer requiring for folks to be in the office. Or we, for example, have gone to a flex model where 50% of the time working from home is acceptable. So that might really broaden the amount of commuting that you're wanting to do over a long term. So do keep that in mind in our ever-changing remote world.
Right. Good call on. Next slide. So again, this is what we kind of talked about before. Understand more about the company that you're looking to work with. If you get an interview, they're going to ask you a lot of questions, but one of the best things I used to love when I was interviewing people was the questions that I got asked as the interviewer, or the interviewer. So because what it does is, again, it tells you that this person has done some legwork. They've done some research. And if you can spin your interest in, quote, getting a job into bringing value to that company, the more they're going to look at you. So again, follow companies you're interested in, follow the influencers, follow industries that you might be looking to work in. Again, you're going to get more inside scoop from the various different ways you might be able to do this. Next slide. So as this is kind of talking about here, your dream job is closer than you think. I will caveat with the way we all go, and what always happens with people is very rarely do you jump into your dream job immediately, right out of the gate. So it's all about building yourself up. And it's all about helping yourself to show and showcase your skills so that you can get closer to that dream job. It's just a matter of you getting out there and really marketing yourself as a candidate for potential recruitment opportunities.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And these are all just initial steps to take. So especially if you're, currently a senior and you're thinking about quick, I've got to get a job by the summertime,
Mhm.
then this can feel overwhelming, but it shouldn't be. This is the first step in the right direction. The fact is you're going to apply to a lot of jobs that you never hear back from, and you're going to apply to some jobs that you get and you don't like, and then there are going to be
Yeah.
opportunities that have some range of differences in there, and then eventually you might be lucky enough to land literally your dream job like Eric and I have. But
Mhm.
I think the overall idea here is that expanding your network and making sure that your LinkedIn profile is set up to find that success is just a first step in the right direction. So don't be overwhelmed by this. Hopefully we've given you some things to think about, but not so much that you suddenly feel like you're going to have a nervous breakdown. One thing we've been talking a lot about always, but especially over the last year, is your mental health and your wellness, your self-care options right now. We have some fantastic mental health and self-care resources on LinkedIn Learning. And I'm picky. I've been doing this for a long time, and I think this is one of the best courses out there. Hannah Enom runs a course around mindfulness. She has a lot of different mindfulness practices. Can't remember, there were so many awesome options that I was going to choose, but I pulled the exact QR code for one of them. It's a 4-minute practice, just a bit more. So take a few minutes after this session to just take a deep breath and decide, to go at this with a calm perspective before getting overwhelmed by anything. I do want to throw up this survey while people pop in any extra questions they have. I'm going to have to hop off in a minute, but I'm not sure if Eric, you have a hard stop here.
I do too. Yeah.
Oh, we've both got hard stops. So if you have super burning questions, connect with us, send them our way. But I would say you, Jungwon, this is a great question around asking, connecting with a professional to ask for a referral in a position. If you're connecting with someone you don't know well that you want a referral for, think about whether you in their position would be comfortable doing that. I, for one, would never recommend someone I don't know to LinkedIn because I can't vouch for that person. I know that I will be judged by that person's quality.
Right.
It reflects poorly on me if that person is not a qualified candidate. So be careful when you think through that, but do try and be upfront about it. If you connect with someone and you say, hey, I'd love to share a little bit more about who I am and why I think I'd be good for this position. And if you're comfortable, a referral would be amazing, but no pressure if not. So it's less about length and it's more about being upfront.
And that's a good way to use your second connections too. Because if you do have somebody who can refer you that maybe isn't there, but does know that, and LinkedIn will tell you that, you can ask that person that you do know, would you be willing to give my referral to this person who can then hand it off? Again, it's a way to at least get your foot in the door with somebody, and maybe then they want to engage with you directly, and then you can do your own work at that point.
And Carrie threw in a great question about a program that I do not know anything about, the OPT eligibility, OPT. So I don't know if it's okay with you, Kev. Would it be all right if I go ahead and switch back, stop sharing this, and pass it back to you to keep going?
Yes. Thank you, Eric and Sarah. That was amazing. You guys did such a great job. And just to kind of wrap up today, I know we're getting close to the end of the hour. Like I said in the chat, tomorrow, me and my coworker, Megan, we will be in the RSC 142 from 2 to 4 p.m. and we will take your professional profile pictures so you can get those uploaded and fresh on LinkedIn. And if you are busy tomorrow, you cannot make it, we do professional photo appointments in our office. You can just log into your Handshake account to there and schedule a professional photo. And just Eric and Sarah talked a lot about LinkedIn Learning. It's so cool that every WSU student, faculty, and staff, you have access to LinkedIn Learning. You can go on there, you can learn more about rocking your LinkedIn profile. There's other courses on resume building, interviewing, all sorts of other professional skills, graphic design, photography. I mean, it runs the gamut. When we say there's tons of classes on there, there are tons of classes on there. So if you go to wichita.edu/LIL, it'll tell you how to set that up, how to connect your profile, everything. And then we'd love to have you get social with the Shocker Career Accelerator. And we have tons of career workshops, interviewing, resume building at our career events webpage. And we also, we work with Applied Learning. We have a career closet. Visit us for any of these. And here's our contact information. And again, you can schedule appointments online, and we're doing appointments in person and virtually. So we hope to see you at the Shocker Career Accelerator. And if you do have any questions that didn't get answered today, you can go ahead and email me. I'll drop my email in there in the chat right now. So feel free to connect that way and we can get you connected. But thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
Thank you, Eric and Sarah.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.